All right, let's talk about magic.
Again, they say
When we sit down to watch fantasy or sci-fi, we're agreeing to believe in the impossible, but the best stories make us forget it's impossible because they follow their own rules. In The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is incredibly powerful, but he can't just snap his fingers and delete the ring. He has limits. He's a guide, not a god. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, bending isn't just a superpower, it's a discipline. It takes training, restraint, and there are real physical and ethical costs. These rules aren't restrictions for the writer. They're the foundation of great drama. They force characters to struggle, to think, to earn their victories. Now cut to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When Doctor Strange introduced magic, it felt promising. Psychedelic visuals, talk of dimensions and cosmic energy. It sounded like we were getting a structured system. But look closer, and the cracks start to show. The rules in the MCU aren't really rules, they're suggestions. They exist to explain why something can happen now that couldn't happen 5 minutes ago. Magic becomes less of a system and more of a narrative shortcut, a visual effect, a plot device. In this video, we're going to track how this problem starts in Doctor Strange, escalates in WandaVision, and completely collapses in Multiverse of Madness, turning what should be the most exciting part of the MCU into its most inconsistent storytelling tool. I've made a full character study on Doctor Strange before, but there's something I didn't talk about in that video. The first Doctor Strange film actually does a lot right. It introduces Kamar-Taj with a real sense of discipline and wonder. Stephen Strange is humbled. He doesn't just wave his hands and become a sorcerer. He studies, he practices, and he fails. A lot. That training montage matters because it convinces us that magic in this world is a skill. It has a learning curve. It has structure. The Ancient One even gives us a philosophy, drawing power from other dimensions, and the danger of tapping into the wrong ones, like the Dark Dimension. For a moment, it feels like we're being handed a rulebook. But as time goes on, those rules quietly dissolve. Take the sling ring. It's introduced as a vital tool for creating portals, with a clear rule. You have to focus your will and vividly visualize your destination. Strange struggles with it, and we're told many students take a long time to master it.
Any second now.
No, not again.
This establishes real difficulty, real mental discipline, a limitation that creates tension. Then Spider-Man No Way Home happens.
Okay. I just wish we could see Peter.
Okay.
Ned Leeds, with zero training and zero knowledge of the mystic arts, picks up the sling ring and opens a portal within seconds.
Do you expect me to believe a story like that? What kind of an idiot do you take me for?
This isn't just a joke. It retroactively tells the audience that the rule was never a real limitation. It was just an obstacle for Strange's origin story. Once that story was done, the sling ring became a universal key anyone could use. This is the convenience problem in action. Narrative needs override narrative logic, and it shows up again in Doctor Strange's climax. Strange doesn't defeat Caecilius with a clever application of the magic system we've been taught. He uses the Time Stone, essentially a cheat code that bypasses the entire spell system. The Book of Vishanti is destroyed without meaning. The Darkhold corrupts whoever the script needs it to corrupt, and even the mirror dimension is solved with basic geometry.
The mirror dimension is just geometry? You're great at geometry. You can do geometry.
In the end, Strange often feels less like a mystic and more like another genius problem solver in the MCU. Magic becomes another branch of science, not a metaphysical force with its own internal logic. Now to Wanda Maximoff. We all know from comic book lore that the Scarlet Witch is supposed to be one of the most powerful beings in the universe. That's her entire brand. But in visual storytelling, you can't just tell us that. You have to make us feel it through a journey we can believe in. You need to see the struggle, the cost, the gradual understanding of that power. Let's track her trajectory, because it's wild. She starts as a Hydra test subject with telekinesis and some persuasive mind magic. In Age of Ultron, she's powerful but emotionally raw, a weapon trying to control the battlefield. In Civil War, she's more controlled, but still just an asset in a fight, not a god. People die, and she's put under house arrest. Through pain and rage, she almost kills Thanos. This is the moment she realizes she might have been holding back her whole life. But she isn't invincible yet. At this point, we see her experimenting with her powers across Infinity War and Endgame, slowly escalating, slowly discovering what she can do. Then we get to WandaVision, and here's the monumental leap. With no formal training, no mentor, and while completely shattered by grief, she unconsciously creates a massive, complex, reality-altering field that warps space, time, and biology for thousands of people. She's rewriting reality on a molecular level, creating sentient life, and maintaining a sitcom universe, all while in a state of deep psychological denial.
Wanda, welcome home.
This isn't just a step up. This is leaping from a very powerful enhanced human to a reality-warping cosmic entity overnight. The show's explanation, that she always had chaos magic and the Mind Stone just unlocked it, feels less like clever foreshadowing and more like a retroactive excuse for a massive, unearned power spike designed to facilitate the show's high-concept premise. In essence, the idea isn't bad, but it glitches out everything we knew about this character before now. The twins were supposed to be experiments, but now she's a mythical witch with destiny-coded powers? This is narrative determinism replacing character development. This is where the magic system truly becomes a slave to the plot, and the character arc gets sacrificed for spectacle. The entire show is structured as a mystery. How is Wanda doing this? Agatha Harkness is introduced as our detective, our exposition machine, the one who's supposed to give us the rulebook. And she does. She lays out the lore, chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch, a being who is not born but forged, destined to surpass the Sorcerer Supreme.
An entire chapter devoted to you in the Darkhold? That's the Book of the Damned. The Scarlet Witch is not born, she is forged. She has no coven, no need for incantation.
I'm not a witch. I don't cast spells. No one taught me magic.
Your power exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme. It's your destiny to destroy the world.
It feels like we're finally getting a textbook for how Wanda's power works. But this exposition has a fatal ideological flaw. It doesn't establish limitations. It only mythologizes her power. It doesn't box her in. It turns her into a predestined force of nature. The narrative adopts a kind of power essentialism. Wanda is powerful because destiny said so, not because of choices, discipline, or cost. So when we get to the final showdown, the payoff is narratively hollow. Wanda doesn't defeat Agatha by outsmarting her, by using the rules of witchcraft in a clever way Agatha didn't anticipate, or by making a difficult choice that reflects growth. Instead, the climax hinges on Wanda, within minutes in a basement, absorbing forbidden knowledge from the Darkhold.
Want any chalk? Nothing? These are runes, Wanda. How do you not know the fundamentals?
She instantly masters advanced, forgotten rune magic that Agatha herself said requires immense skill, and which conveniently makes the caster immune to other magic users. She wins not through her journey in the Hex, but through a last-second download of power and information. The rules Agatha provided weren't a framework for drama. They were just lore dressing for a Deus Ex Machina. This is peak writer convenience. When you've written your character into a corner and need her to become the Scarlet Witch, you just hand her the perfect tool at the exact moment she needs it. Her struggle, Agatha's centuries of knowledge, the entire mystical tradition, rendered irrelevant. The magic didn't serve Wanda's character. Wanda's character was bent to serve the magic the plot needed her to have. And after all the torment and psychological torture she inflicted on thousands of people for an android and children that weren't real, we're still framed to see her as the victim.
I know. Wanda,
Dottie.
my name is Sarah. I have a daughter. She's 8. If you could just let her out of her room. If I could just hold her, please.
What are you doing to her? You're making her say this.
She's your meat puppet. I just cut her strings.
There's barely any genuine moral reckoning. No ideological confrontation with what absolute power does to a grieving individual. Instead, the narrative quietly absolves her, as if trauma justifies tyranny. Compare that to how other stories treat power and responsibility. Here, Wanda walks away with cosmic power and almost no ethical consequence, framed as misunderstood rather than culpable.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
It wouldn't change how they see me.
It's not just inconsistent magic, it's inconsistent moral philosophy.
I don't understand this power, but I will. Goodbye, Monica.
This is where the narrative convenience isn't just a crack in the foundation or a weak ending. It becomes the entire plot. Let's start with the most glaring elephant in the room, the stakes. We are told that the Scarlet Witch, corrupted by the Darkhold, is now an omniversal threat, a monster hunting a child across realities to steal her powers. This is a global, arguably universal crisis. So why is Doctor Strange's first instinct to go see Wong and not, say, pick up a phone and call Captain Marvel, Bruce Banner, or any of the other people who helped save the universe from Thanos? The movie hand waves this away, but the real answer is pure plot convenience. Having the Avengers involved would complicate the clean horror movie chase structure the filmmakers wanted. So the world-ending threat is treated like a private matter, because the script requires isolation. The shared universe ideology the MCU was built on, collective responsibility, interdependence, teamwork, suddenly disappears when it becomes inconvenient. The story abandons its own political philosophy of unity in favor of narrative efficiency. Wanda's power level is now entirely dictated by what the plot needs her to be to generate tension, not by any consistent metric we've seen before. And this inconsistency plagues the entire film, especially with the Darkhold. The corruption is a great idea in theory, a classic Faustian bargain where power comes at a terrible cost. Power without consequence is propaganda. Power with consequence is tragedy. We've seen this done before. The One Ring in The Lord of the Rings visibly corrodes its bearer. The dark side of the Force in Star Wars deforms and spiritually consumes its users. Power demands sacrifice. That's the moral law of myth, a kind of narrative karma. The greater the power, the greater the cost. But in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the Darkhold's corruption is incredibly selective. It gives Wanda every ability she needs. Dreamwalking, monster summoning, effortless reality warping, with seemingly no cost to her psychological stability or physical function until the exact final moment when the plot requires her to break down. Meanwhile, Doctor Strange reads from it and walks away with a strange CGI third eye at the end. The profound lessons from his previous film, the dangers of arrogance, the cost of manipulating reality, are conveniently sidelined because the new plot needs him to have a cool, zombified showdown. It's a perfect example of ideological inconsistency. Magic carries grave consequences when the story wants moral weight, but those consequences evaporate when spectacle is prioritized. The emotional weight of Wanda's arc is present, but it's built on narrative quicksand, where the rules of power, consequence, and even character intelligence shift from scene to scene just to keep the chase alive. The idea of Wanda becoming heavily corrupted by the Darkhold isn't stupid. It could have worked if the groundwork had been laid properly, if WandaVision had framed her not as a misunderstood victim, but as what she objectively was, a deeply disturbed and morally compromised individual who enslaved and psychologically tortured an entire town out of grief. If she and her fabricated family had been treated as morally gray figures, attempting to repair the damage they caused, rather than tragic heroes displaced by circumstance, then Multiverse of Madness would feel like a natural ideological continuation instead of a forced escalation. You don't need your protagonist to be a hero. A protagonist is simply the axis of the story, not its moral compass. Tragic figures are compelling precisely because they fall under the weight of their flaws. But the Marvel Cinematic Universe seems uncomfortable allowing its central figures to fully inhabit moral darkness without softening it. The brand demands emotional sympathy, even when the actions demand ethical confrontation. That tension between branding and moral consequence creates narrative dishonesty, and I genuinely thought Wanda had come to terms with her reality by the end of the series. Apparently not. So where does this leave us? We've followed this thread from the promising but vague beginnings in Kamar-Taj, through Wanda's sudden and unearned godhood, to the chaotic, rule-breaking spectacle of the multiverse. The pattern is undeniable. Magic in the MCU hasn't been constructed as a coherent metaphysical system. It's been used as a narrative Swiss Army knife with a new blade unfolding whenever the writer reaches a dead end. And this isn't just a nerd complaint about inconsistent power scaling. It has a philosophical cost. When there are no rules, there are no real stakes. When there are no real stakes, there is no real drama. The tension that makes stories like The Lord of the Rings or The Dark Knight so gripping comes from knowing the limits. We know the heroes cannot simply will themselves out of danger. There is structure, there is consequence, there is moral gravity. The universe pushes back. In the MCU, we now wait for the next unexplained power-up or conveniently forgotten spell to resolve the conflict. Victories feel unearned, struggles feel artificial, conflict becomes choreography instead of storytelling. And this problem isn't confined to Strange and Wanda. Look at the earliest magic users in this universe, Frigga and Loki. Loki, the god of mischief, was introduced as a master illusionist whose magic was subtle, psychological, and deeply tied to his insecurity and need for validation. Over time, he was gradually reduced in ensemble films to Knife Guy, his mysticism simplified into physical combat. The epic, Norse-inspired mysticism of Asgard, described as so advanced it was indistinguishable from science, was flattened into beams of light and force fields. We never explored its rules, its cosmology, or its metaphysical implications. These ideas were introduced with enormous philosophical potential, only to be compressed into visual effects when larger crossover plots required simplicity. Frigga was portrayed as a powerful sorceress and master of illusion who trained Loki, yet we barely witnessed the depth of her abilities before she was killed off in a film most people rarely revisit. The mythology was introduced but never allowed to mature. Even in Loki, we only glimpse a fraction of what he was capable of in the comics. His magic consistently takes a back seat to plot mechanics. His arc, too, feels ideologically abrupt. This is a man who killed 80 people in 2 days, and suddenly he is repositioned as a heroic figure fighting for the greater good. In the end, the greatest casualty of this inconsistent magic isn't just the internal logic of the universe, it's the soul of the stories themselves. The MCU's magic isn't broken because it's powerful. It's broken because it's arbitrary. It serves the writer's immediate need for spectacle and resolution, not the story's need for structure, tension, and moral consequence. It makes the extraordinary feel disposable. And when magic, the very thing meant to inspire awe and transcend logic, becomes the most illogical element in your world, you don't just lose consistency, you lose wonder.